Yes.
Go ahead, sir. Hello, everyone.
We have the president here, our real president, everyone. Hello, Mr. President.
MacronShow.com, bitches. MacronShow.com.
Okay.
All right.
I
Sorry,
guess that
folks.
wasn't. I guess that was. You see what they're doing? They're attacking us. They're attacking us, and this is what. I mean, that even came up. They're hacking into our phones. It came up that it was a legitimate number.
Call.
A legitimate. I know the number's coming from.
Ha ha. Wasn't that great, ladies and gentlemen? I think that was our own David Price, believe it or not. I'm not quite sure, but it's certainly something Dave would conjure up. So it's great to see everybody tonight. It is the 24th of April, Saturday, at about 10 after. So it's good to see everybody. And, geez, we have a lot to talk about tonight. We were expecting to have a guest on, and unfortunately, our guest George had to go to a competition tonight in North Jersey, and we understand that because George is a dedicated teacher of junior ROTC, and he really loves his kids, and he wanted to be on, but he couldn't make it tonight, so that does happen. And plainly excused, absolutely. So first of all, I'd like to introduce my good friend and cohort, David Price. Dave, how you doing?
Good, Brian. I sort of, I always cringe a little bit when you say good friend. Could you just kind of identify me as, oh, I don't know, somebody who really doesn't like you that much, but does the show? I think that would be, a more accurate portrayal.
Yeah.
No, Brian, we are, for better or worse, we are good friends.
Yes, we are.
And so, yeah.
By the way, was that you who pranked Mike
God,
Lindell?
God, no. I would do that. I think it would be great.
Yeah.
What it does do, though, really, it's so funny because these people, I'm going to start calling now. Whatever the GOP is today, I have no idea really what to call it. But it's like if you listen to Pillow Boys talk there, the real president, my president, no, Pillow Guy. Then immediately into this attack. Now. They're cloning our phones. They're saving. Come on. That was as old as radio itself, a prank.
Right.
It's been done for years. Obviously,
and no more well-deserved than against that guy.
I mean, it can happen. I don't mean it. It can't happen. It can happen to any of us. It could happen to us on this show when we start going, eventually to phone calls in. But the idea is that you're supposed to screen them. And, I know you said you were going to look a little bit tonight. One of the things you wanted to deal with, which of course is one of my favorite topics, news or what Fox News claims is news. And that kind of ties in. I mean, come on, putting the Pillow Guy on, really?
Right.
Really?
Well, we know how gun shy Fox News is because, this whole thing with Dominion is have them shitting bricks. And,
right.
Obviously, look, they got rid of Dobbs because they knew that Dobbs was a loose cannon. If they left him on there, Dave, I'm quite sure you would agree with me that you wouldn't know what he's going to do. And then Mike Lindell, who, he's batshit crazy. It's just
you do wonder. You do wonder, and I'm sure there's a writer out there who's actually looking into him, and we'll get a biography, because he's become kind of a, tangential player, but nonetheless a player in this political mess of the 2020s. And it would be interesting to see, was he born that way? Did he have a conversion to idiocy? Did his mom drop him on his head and he's always been this way? And then, of course, the question becomes...
He is a con artist. We know that.
Well, yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons we got Trump. Unfortunately, people often associate success with really working and honesty and planning and intelligence. And no, you can con your way pretty damn far, especially in today's society with social media and whatever. But I'm always fascinated with the peripheral characters. Of course, Trump is Trump, but like these people around him, like Michael Cohen, I mean, he's trying to talk his way out of, maybe he did have, the Saul becomes Paul,
Right.
come to literal come to Jesus moment on the road to Damascus. I sort of doubt it, but
He's going to have to earn his freight for the rest of his
well,
life.
and I think no matter what he does, the people that he hurt, and they are so many.
Including
there's
his
no way
wife and his kids.
there's no way to make amends to them. Really, that's justified, and that's one of the problems when you start down the road of evil or difficulty for others. The longer you go on that path, the harder it is if you do indeed, and certainly, I mean, conversions, not using the biblical term, but the idea of seeing you were wrong and changing. But the longer you're on that path, the further down, the more you did, the harder it is to make amends. So the pillow guy, at what moment did he become, it's not just a moment, but I mean, the pattern, where did he end up, A, being the con man, and B, being Trump's buddy, and C, staying with Trump when they're obviously, and lying, continuing to lie for him. It's okay to say, I love Donald Trump. He was president. I think he was a great president, and now he's not. And I hope he runs in 2024, and I hope he wins. Right. I mean, that's a legitimate. I mean, that's a legitimate political thought, but not the idea of it was taken from him, it was stolen from him, et cetera, which is pretty much the narrative that we hear played out so much.
Right. Right. Well, I wanted to kind of delve into this kind of idea of where these guys, get their power, get their audience, so to speak. I mean, again, we know that Lindell is not really welcome at Fox, only because Fox is so worried about that Dominion suit, as well as this, was it Smartmatic? But I wanted to take a quick journey back, and I like doing this, Dave. I'm going to take a quick journey back to Fox's website, okay? And I think this is kind of interesting. We're not going to go looking at any specific story, Dave, here. But if you notice where they're going with this, okay, first of all, we know that we've had the George Floyd thing. We've had other shootings by police recently, and you don't see anything here on the main stories. Here you have a picture of Uncle Sam when they have Joe Biden there. So this is their propaganda. They have Kamala Harris. They have LeBron James. Now we're going to start seeing a connection here. Ilhan Omar, Maxine Waters, Kamala Harris again. We're starting to see a connection here. I guess this might be, I don't know if this is Charles Barkley or not. I don't think it, I can't really tell. But that's not the point. It doesn't even matter. You start seeing faces there where you start saying, you know what? It seems they're preoccupied with African Americans. And could it be, Dave, that Fox News kind of knows that their audience is racist, and they're playing the racist game, it seems to me. And
Brian, you're not a stupid person. You're very smart. What you just said reminds me of, could it be, Dave, that the sun is bright and hot? Of course they're playing a racist game. Look, they are no more news than the KKK report that former Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest put out at first. All right. What they are is primarily started for Rupert Murdoch as a money-making scheme, really. Now, Murdoch, again, we touched upon this, but every once in a while we get a new listener, so it's good to touch back on it. Murdoch's father was actually not a bad journalist in Australia. He started in Australia. But I think Rupert was probably one of those kids that said, my dad worked hard. I'm guessing at this, but my dad worked hard and didn't get anywhere. I'm going to get newspapers and I'm going to get somewhere. And so he pretty much destroyed Australian journalism, moved to England, destroyed England journalism, and came over here. Now, he is a conservative by nature, Rupert Murdoch, as are so many, filthy rich business people. But I think the real problem is when Roger Ailes took over the news division, and Roger had never had the ability to separate news from political belief. He was a Nixon boy, and staunch conservative against anything that smacks of liberalism, and so he began to take it in that direction. And then at the same time, Brian, what happens is, and I secularly preach this. One of my biggest concerns about America is that we become completely a cult of personality.
Right.
That is why Donald Trump was elected. That is why now cult of personality can work the other way too. I really hope, honestly, at this point, because it would at least put Texas in the blue camp for a governor, that Matt McConaughey does run, for governor and wins. But what gives him, any indication from his past that he could be a good governor or a good politician? Again, if you want to look at where that started, we look at Ronald Reagan, right? Reagan, although I will say this about Ronald Reagan, he didn't have political experience, but he had been very active and president of what was then, now it's called the Screen Actors Guild. And so, I mean, he did have some leadership qualities. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And we end up with Roger Ailes saying, okay, we'll ride this thing. And now who do we have? We have, it'd be interesting if you could have Fox and be truthful. Why did they fire and get rid of Lou Dobbs, but keep Sean Hannity?
Right. That is interesting.
And
can we think about that?
Yeah. No, I can tell you why I think. There's a term.
Well, Hannity really wasn't. He shut up with the Dominion thing pretty quickly.
But what I'm saying is, it's not just that. It's Hannity. Hannity. Yes, again, I've mentioned it on this show. I believe it. I believe that Sean Hannity would like to be president of the United States. And I think Tucker Carlson wouldn't turn it down. But the problem becomes when you get something like this. Okay, they had to make a sacrifice, because that was pretty scary. That was pretty scary in terms of what they did, and Dominion sweeping in, and now followed by others, and saying, okay, you made it up. We're going to prove you made it up, and we're going to hit you right in the pocketbook. So I think with Dobbs, my guess is Dobbs was sacrificial. I can't, I could go back and check, and we all could. I imagine Dobbs' ratings weren't as high.
And who knows really behind the scenes the relationship between Dobbs and Fox? And even though they're all conservatives, we don't know the personalities.
There's all that, and but a driving force in television news, and let's not pass the let's not give the get out of free card to MSNBC or CNN. The main thing is to get viewers, ratings, because it's advertising. The same thing in newspapers. It's always been about circulation, in the modern era. And that's why, but we've changed as Americans. I mean, go back prior to what? Go back to early 1900s. The majority of people got their information from newspapers, then radio, then television, and now the internet. And each one, Brian, if you study that, if you go back, do you realize, and a lot of people don't, that all newspaper articles prior to basically, I don't know, the 60s, they were unsigned. Reporters were just anonymous people, right? Now the politicians they covered, they knew who they were, but it was they weren't there. And then in what was kind of nice at the time for reporters, you began to get your name on it. I mean, we all of us who worked, for newspapers kind of treasured that first time you saw your name in print. That kind of gave you what would you say? Not a rationale for being, but it was just wonderful, right? Okay, especially if that's what you wanted to do with your career. But if you study each one of those, it becomes more and more a cult of personality. So we have Ailes, who wanted to shape a political thought. We also had Ailes, who was quite a ladies-looking man, right? Fox News, they went with the blonde You could just imagine, older gentlemen wishing back when and watching that. They're very good. They're very good at doing what they do. It's just what they do is very, very bad.
Right. It's
But they
atrocious.
are good.
Right. I mean, they're good at manipulation. It's theater. It's everything that we see
Right.
through. However, they're so good. And when look, I always bring up the topic of my cousin who's the Trumper.
Right.
Everything that he says is really just a mirror image of what comes out of Fox News, and I can almost tell it immediately. He's getting something from Tucker Carlson or whatever.
Well, that's interesting. You bring that up, Brian, because I'm working on a couple of projects here involving one of my favorite bands, the Beatles. And one of the great questions about the Beatles of all time is how much did they shape society and how much did they reflect what society was doing in their music, right? And it's kind of the same thing. You would ask, how much does Fox shape society and how much is Fox reflecting what society is? And I think in the case, the answer is much clearer than it is with the Beatles. Fox is definitely shaping the political discussion of at least 1/3 to 1/2 of America. Now, notice, and I think you were absolutely right. They do it by two ways. Well, many ways, but
Sorry, Dave.
on their website.
You're good.
I'll wait. Okay.
Okay.
Not
Yeah.
putting anything up on their website or on air that would reflect badly on the Republican, GOP, Trumpian, whatever we're calling it these days, position. So if you don't see that and you follow Fox News and you believe that, it becomes a non-story
Well,
because everyone else is lying. Everyone else is lying.
right. Let's just look, if you don't mind. Let me see if I can get
Sure.
an overlay pointer. I have pointers here.
What are we looking at here, Brian? On-air personalities. Who we got?
Okay, let's see if I can throw a pointer girl here. Look
Oh, there
at
she
some of
is.
these names of on-air person. These are on-air personalities. It means they may not be on regularly every day, but they are on-air personalities at Fox.
For
And you see
for Fox.
for Fox. Yeah, I mean, look, if I went down
Mark
further-
Furman wasn't Mark Furman one of the original? Hey,
Ah.
I'm a bad cop, and I'm going to be so bad that I'm going to get a murderer.
right,
off
and they
by my
throw in
incompetence.
some quasi intellectuals like Charles Krauthammer.
Howard Kurtz is not a bad writer, but
But look at
You know-
the gist of this. If you look at these names, Mark Levin is batshit crazy. There's no doubt
Right.
about that. Mark Siegel, not a great. I mean, most of these people. I mean, there may be some that seem.
Karl Rove, who's very political, and
Now they do have Donna Brazil, and she, because she does work. I guess work for Fox now, even though she's the liberal, one of the few liberals.
well, they've always had that. But remember too, Brian, there's really three Fox Newses, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. There's the Fox News that tries to play, sort of to keep their idea that they are indeed a news organization. So that's where Donna Brazile and Juan Williams and Mike Wallace's kid, where they all come in. And then you've got the Fox that doesn't try to do that at different hours. And then you've got the Fox, imagination evening programs where it's just commentary posing as whatever it's posing as.
Just look at these names, though. I mean, this is nonstop. I mean, there are a few people that you might say, okay, there aren't absolutely hideous, like Juan Williams, though I have a problem with him sometimes. But just about everybody, for the exception, maybe Chris Wallace.
That's what I mentioned. I mentioned, Chris, Juan.
But other than that, Bill Hemmer is up their ass. Neil Cavuto, not the worst, but not great at all. But the rest of these people, they're just horrific. So again, this is just basically.
But see, everyone should
Trey Gowdy. I mean, what the hell is that?
Well, you notice what happens, Brian, and this is again, we have a lot of viewers here that really want to clean up government by tearing it down, and I can't disagree with them. I mean, yeah, I don't know if we can do it today. I mean, there's certainly a lot of things wrong, and one of them is what here in D.C. is referred to, as the pipeline. You get into the pipeline. So the pipeline can run any place you can get on and get off. So let's say you get off as a congressman, then you go to becoming a lobbyist, or you go to a commentator, and all of a sudden everybody's, nobody's like independent coming in, right?
I think he was
well,
talking about
Gary,
my pointer girl. He says,
yeah, well,
yeah,
Gary,
this is the girl here.
yeah.
I'll let her point
Yeah.
at your comment, Gary. How's that? Okay.
Oh, yeah, there you go. That's Pointer Girl. But
I like
the
the
idea
twist
of it,
she puts
but,
in her
but,
pointed figure and the gaping mouth.
but the idea of having this pass as news should be disturbing to every American. But again, it's not, because it's accepted as news by one third of the Americans. It's accepted, as much as the Bible is news, and maybe as much as another 17-20% thing. Sometimes, and it's not. I mean, it's just not. Now, if you want to point the finger at MSNBC, and I will from time to time, the difference is, if you don't, it's like when I say there's a difference between Biden and Trump. Of course there is. It's like when I say there's a difference between Republicans and Democrats. Of course there is. Well, there's a difference between MSNBC and Fox. And what I would challenge anyone who doesn't agree with that. So here's what you need to do if you're not sure, or if you believe they're equal. Watch a little bit of both and see how many real stories MSNBC deals with. Now, they can deal with it from a leftist view, right? Leftist commentary, but they're real stories. And how many actual real stories you see on Fox, and how many are avoided. And I think you'll see, why I feel that of the two, one is better than the other. And not because it agrees with my many of my stances and beliefs, but simply because it does deal with real things that are happening in America, not this imaginary anti-reality that Trumpublicans have created and concocted out there.
Right. Well, we've had a very busy week, Dave, on Divided We Stand. We've added I'd say not a lot of new members. Keeps going up and down, but generally going up, and we really do appreciate that. But you and I have discussed this, and we will probably discuss this ad infinitum. But we are convinced, first of all, that we did the right thing of creating this page called the Divided We Stand group page, and having this show, because we knew instinctively that this was something that was going to continue. No, we have, I guess, I don't know what one of better words, this situation between the Democratic Party and let's just say this situation with the Republican Party, because that's really the real problem. This is I don't know, it's like just a complete shift in the paradigm. I don't really want to get into polemics, but it's just, this group is so fucking nuts, and they know. I mean, we've seen things this week where they've talked about the fact that, this is what they're saying on Fox, is that there's so many people coming over the border and they're all going to vote Democratic, and we want to stop. That was basically Tucker Carlson, and now it's just kind of out in the open. They don't want to see DC having statehood. The whole point is they want to have minority control of the country, which is essentially what is happening in Russia right now, where you have minority control, except that Putin does control, everything, every branch of government he controls.
Well, there were a hell of a lot of people protesting in Russia this week too.
Right,
so
and there was a whole lot
not enough to change it. I understand.
And Dave, I'm going to interrupt you. They have the same problem there, and this is what I've discussed with my Sunday group of people I speak with from Russia, is they have the same problem there, because they do have this group of 40 or 50% of the people who, for whatever reason, they just buy it hook, line, and sinker, because Putin controls all the various networks across the country. They watch TV and they believe it America is horrible. They're trying to destroy us again, and this is what happens when you don't even need 50%. You just need to have some control of something. But my worry is, Dave, and I'm sure you're just as worried, that because they see themselves and they know that they are a minority party, they are going to do everything possible legally. And you discussed this with actually this morning, where they may get away with this thing still because 2 years from now there'll be elections. They've got these gerrymandered this and that. We don't have the Senate. We have Joe Manchin's a pain in the ass. We're still in trouble.
Oh, well, absolutely. Here's something revelatory. People do not like change. Most people. Now, the problem with that is everything changes, Brian, right? I mean, name one thing that is the same in your life that it was 30 years ago. What's the same?
That's a great question. I actually would have to think about that.
And I'm going to give you the answer.
I'm not personally. I just about the country itself that is around me.
Everywhere.
Everything has changed. The internet.
It doesn't
blah,
matter.
blah, blah.
It doesn't matter whether you're the country, whether you're the person.
But the ignorance on the right is actually gotten worse. But
I'm not saying that. But I'm saying part of their ignorance is a resistance to deal with the change that is inevitable. They want to go back to a time that was not good for anyone in the country except white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males with some ability to make an income, right? Or that were rich, and the rest of the nation be damned. Well, I don't think that was not a majority ever, but it's certainly not a majority today. So that's the first thing. They want to go back, and you can't. So what do you deal with? All groups have a hesitancy. Again, before we anoint the Democrats as saviors, there are a number of them. Joe Biden being one. That I really believe President Biden kind of longs for. A Senate that once was, and he was part of it, and he was one of the people that was able to work across the aisle. That isn't going to work anymore. It's just not going to work. I'm sorry.
No, you're right.
I'm not listening to anybody who wants unity. I'm not listening to anybody who says, well, we should incorporate, we should include. Okay. Many reasons for that. And the majority of blame goes to the Republicans at this point, like 94.3% or something. When you have the single leading Republican, now that Trump is out of office, saying there's no way. We're not going to approve anything that President Biden or the Democrats bring up, even if it's good for America. And they should have said, even if it's good for our people, because obviously it's good for America, it's good for their people. So how do you compromise it? But now you've got another problem because you really don't have a 50-50 Senate. You really have a 50-48, sometimes 50 Senate, right? Right. Depending on what Manchin and your girl Sinema do. And, I'd love to say that they're people of conscience. I don't know Sinema's. I've got it, before I could really comment intelligently on her, I'd have to know more about her background. Manchin, I do understand. Like I said, I've heard him speak a few times. And I think if you would ask him, and it might even be true. Mm-hmm. Yes, he wants to stay in the Senate. Yes, he knows that. But he feels that he can kind of, be right because he doesn't have to side with either side. But right now, West Virginia.
Do you think he actually is gloating in his power now? Aside from the fact
no, well, of course. I mean, look, the two problems right now in the news are there's many, but the two big ones are really politics and police, right? I mean, right now. Okay. And what do they share in common? Power. Now, Lord Acton, it's a tribute to a lot of people. It's actually Lord Acton back a long time ago in Britain said, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I don't know that that's a truism, but I certainly know that power is not only a sexual aphrodisiac, it's an ego aphrodisiac. If you have a tendency to revel in power, All of a sudden, people kiss your ass constantly. And if you're a senator, you are one of, after the president of the United States and after the Supreme Court justices as individuals, you are clearly you are the next group of 100 most powerful people in America, right?
Right.
So, having been said, does Mansion go home at night and revel in the fact that I can control or do this? That I don't know, because I'm not there with him, and I don't know. Motive is hard to distinguish, even if they're telling you that. But I think if indeed he does think he's doing right, I just don't think he is. Because I think like I said, if you take my premise as truth, and I do, that everything changes, then you need to not only change with the times, you need to have your institutions and your organizations change with the times. And because bureaucracy, power, institutions, wealth, all these things that are at the top don't want to change, right? They're doing okay. Imagine if you will, for a moment. Democrats, they want to get rid of gerrymandering, right? But it's for others, not really for themselves, because they won their district, right?
Right.
Now, maybe who is, I think is very impressive, time will tell, Reverend Warnock from Georgia. He may be legitimate, in terms of, because he's in the fight, he's going to be in a fight. Georgia is not completely yet a blue state where you can chalk it up.
And they have a governor there who's
right.
work
but you know what I find interesting down there. Purdue's not going to run. There's people looking, but a couple people have backed off down there. I think they may see. They live there, right? We get our news. I lived there for 14 months, but it was 14 months 5 years ago. In modern age, 5 years ago might as well have been 50 years ago, right? With the people coming in. Certainly, the major industries there have spoken. Whether they'll act. I do think, the one that's going to, if it isn't now, it's the comer there, is, the film industry, film and TV industry. Anybody who doesn't believe that, I have another little test for you. Stay, a lot of us turn off the movie as soon as it's done. Watch and see how many have the Georgia peach label. Marvel.
Well, do you think even the film industry will stay there? Many of these corporations are,
doing
the right thing.
Well, yeah. We have to wait and see, right?
Right.
But
that is an interesting thing to do. Like the boycotts, not only from the consumer, but from the producer, and that's a wonderful combination there.
I think you're right. At least it gives them pause for a second.
Right.
Now, we haven't seen an election. It'll be one thing if you look at all the money, say in Georgia, contributed to the Republican challenger, to Senator Warnock, and there's no corporate money there. Well, there's going to be some, some.
Right, but not like they're used to seeing.
Home Depot's going to be, because so that will be interesting. We don't know that yet. Certainly, who just pulled? Sugar. One film's pulled out already. And the other thing is, what's interesting, Brian. Again, kind of a reduction here, but okay. See if you would agree with this. Broadway is basically a white, power-based organization from history to today, right? Basically, right?
I would agree.
There were no minorities. Jewish people got into it because of money, but there was really no minorities. California, all white and started, right? And so that basis has been established forever, right? Atlanta comes along and it is really being established as a black alternative in entertainment. When you look who's down there, right? And who's going there and who's filming there and the type of films they're doing. So, Georgia will be a state that'll be really interesting to watch. And I hate to use that word because, it's not like interesting to me always seems, Brian, like I'm above the fray and it doesn't matter to me. I'm interested. No, this is literally, I think we're in the fight for the political life of America. I think we're in a fight for the political life of every American.
Right.
I don't see, so, I mean, when I use interest, I got to find a better word. I really do. I'm not apologizing for it because I don't have one, but, and I don't want to use fascinating. They all sound like, you're on the mountain observing the people down there fighting it out. We're right in the middle of it. We have, if some of us have children, some of us have grandchildren, which means, we're not just in this thing alone. We're in for for the future, which we all should be. But sometimes I think, when the future, I use this line all the time, but it is true. I don't know, Brian, how much I knew about the future. I thought about it. I kind of tried, but once the future for me has a name. It has two names, Audrey and Owen. And interesting enough, their time has been spent. The majority of their time has been spent in the South,
right?
Living in Tennessee.
But as much as this is a problem about the future, I don't want to get deeply philosophical here,
right?
But all problems are only solved in the now. I mean,
no argument.
There is really never a future, and there is really never a past. There's only a now,
correct?
And we have to live in that. And I'm going to say
this. I'm going to change that a little bit, although I'm still agreeing with you to a certain extent. There's only a now to shape the future. Correct. What you do now does shape the future.
You have to plan, but I'm saying, but there's nothing wrong with doing the now. But you can't romanticize or think about the past, and you can't do the same for the future. You really have to just wake yourself, so to speak. You
have the moment. Now, in these moments, sometimes it's hard. Two very good things have happened already. Donald Trump is not president.
That's very good. There's a big difference between what would have happened had he won, as compared to what is happening right now. There's a big difference.
And a second thing, the Chavez verdict was the only appropriate verdict given the law.
I mean, not to correct you, but
I said Chavez. Yeah.
I'm thinking of
I'm going Caesar Chavez. Caesar Chavez.
That dates you. It shows you. He was a good guy.
Well,
Chauvin. Derek Chauvin.
Chauvin. Yeah, I did.
But that's all right. I don't like correcting people, but
no, you should, because that's important. See, I don't. If I'm going to be. I made a mistake. No big deal.
Right.
It's a big deal if I. No, it's not about that. It's not about that. If I don't acknowledge it and you don't correct it, somebody might be going around thinking Cesar Chavez was. Yeah, no. But I mean, so the other thing is, but here's the problem when you get those things. Suddenly, people have a tendency, because we only can fight so much, to relax, and it looks like, remember the arc, of moral,
right,
that Dr. King spoke so eloquently about. Well, the problem is that damn thing doesn't bend itself. Okay,
right? Something has to happen.
It's not a rainbow, and we're the ones that have to continue to bend it. So there's nothing wrong with smiling and being happy and taking a couple days and saying, "This is great. Now what's next?"
Right. Somebody has to pay the freight eventually to what's going on. And prayers and thoughts on it. It just doesn't.
But I mean, I understand that. It's hard being an activist. I mean, those people, and I'm not one in the front lines. I mean, I go to protests and I speak, but I mean, those people, think, okay. Now, I'm sure Stacey Abrams, for example, gets some enjoyment out of what she does. And you want to talk about somebody who probably feels pretty good about what was accomplished. She's a person who's entitled to feel really good.
She changed the
that.
future. I mean,
yeah. Well, that's what we're talking about. She did something now.
But we are right. She got involved, and she didn't feel sorry for herself, and she did.
Nope. The government. You want to talk about something stolen. If we could ever get back, we can't prove it, but if we ever got back, I'm pretty sure she didn't get all the votes she should have gotten as governor.
Absolutely. I'm sure most of the stealing that went on, any type of chicanery was from the Republican Party, and they actually know it. They really do.
And I mean, there's kind of a difference too. It's not a difference necessarily in parties, but it's certainly a difference. Did she moan and groan and bitch about like our current president holed up somewhere in where the hell he is tonight? No, she said, "Okay, I'm going to get out there and do something about it," and she did. And that's why, again, I'm tonight, one of my slaps, if you will, not a hard slap, or with people who sit there and say, well, they're no difference. They're all the same. No, there are differences all over, all over. There's differences, with people, with positions, with groups. There's never, now, they may all be bad, right? But some of them are less bad than the others, or they all may be good, but some of them are better. And that describes where we are. And the trick is right now is to figure out where you want to be and what you can do to help move that forward.
Right.
And quite honestly, if you're a liberal in Idaho, the Dakotas, Montana, not much, not much you can do other than do what you can, right?
Right.
I think too, and this is, I don't know.
Retire and move to a red state, and just
Well, I mean, there's
that's a hell of a thing to have to do.
Unfortunately,
I think I want to move to Wyoming.
Well, I mean, no, well, I wouldn't mind. I don't like the Wyoming climate. Now if they'd build me a city, I'd be okay. I don't want to run around where the buffalo roam and the deer and the antelope play. I want to be in the city where the crazies are.
Two
where
centers and a bunch of buffalo.
Wherever they are, right? But again, okay, so you're bringing that up. Is it really fair, just, and right in the modern age that California has 2 senators and the Dakotas each have 2 senators? That means technically, theoretically, the Dakotas have 4 senators because they're
right.
pretty much
it was a territory.
And Montana and Wyoming, and all of a sudden you start adding that up. Now you could say the same thing about California. There was a lot of Miss Jenner. She announced that she's going to run for Republican. There's a lot of talk about that. I wouldn't care if she could run as Bruce, right? I mean, a Republican is just not going to do it in California. So I can see the argument you say, but the difference is there's all these millions of people in California, and they get 2 senators.
Here's my biggest thing, Dave. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh no, do that all the time.
Okay, it's because it's the minority party, and because they can see that the numbers aren't going to get any better for them. They are going to have to work illegally in the future, as they kind of are already. I mean, they had Trump; everything he did was illegal. Right. But it just seems to me that at some level behind the scenes, they're saying, "Look, there's only one way we win. Unless you go back on your platform, there's only one way. We've got to cheat, and we got to lie, and we got to do everything because they're evil, and we're going to do." I mean, I see no other route for the Republican
When you just said that, you're talking about the Democrats doing that against them, or do
I'm talking about the Republican Party.
Well, okay,
and
they
know that they can't pick up the votes, so what they're going to do is they're going to just play this game of doing everything illegal, and then they're going to justify it with Fox News saying that, you're sending all these people over the border, and then as soon as they come over, they're going to vote. It's just ridiculous shit like that.
Well,
and that's what they're going to use, and they are using that now already. So my fear, Dave, is that we're going to see essentially a criminal organization here. And then if they win,
they're going to see.
Look, I get what you're saying, but I'm saying all of them. It's going to make the people under them think that it's okay to do criminal acts.
Going to make them think. Yeah. Did you miss?
Well, there were some. There've been. Brian? Look. I'm talking about just the average Republican. They're going. Well, they're going to run you over with a car if you have some type of protest, and they're going to get away with it apparently.
Well, yes and no. All right. Let's look at like you say. Oh, wait a minute. And this is the thing that again, people not only want to revel, but they want to relax. But what's the most important election every single time? The next one after the day of that election, it's the next election, right? Now, if you look at the off-year election coming up, and we're talking national politics, the norm, if there is a norm, I think it's been violated 3 times in American history. It's very, very rare, is that the party in the White House loses seats in the Senate and in the House. All right. Now, that's traditionally what happens. But I believe this, and again, if nobody else does, I'm fine with that. I think the election of Donald Trump, not Donald Trump himself, the election of Donald Trump signaled a new time, even if it's an anomaly, but a new time. And why do I say that? Simply because Donald Trump was the first president in the United States history who either was not a politician or was not in the service. Okay, I mean, in terms of some leadership in the service, like Dwight Eisenhower, was the general. So, for a long time, but what, and I'm still convinced, and again, people have said that. I mean, I don't know how many. A lot of people voted for Donald Trump because they wanted something different. They were fed up with the government. They thought Hillary was definitely more the same, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm saying it's a new age. And then Trump became so identified with this. If he's still going to be the titular, no, not the non-titular, I guess, head of the Republican Party, the 2022 election is going to be all about Donald Trump and putting him in position to run in 2024. Now, he lost relatively handily the election. The other thing is, look at Joe Biden's popularity numbers, and I know what people are going to say. It's early on. It's this. He hasn't been tested. Yes, nobody's going to stay in that 70 to 80% range. Okay, you can't do that. But right now he is. So, will he drop enough? Or will it be another referendum? And who goes out and who works? And look, the Democrats, for the foreseeable future, whatever that foreseeable future could be, have a pretty effective weapon to get voters out. They have Barack Obama. Now, he also, he's going to get out or help get out the black vote. I think we're seeing more and more activism, in the black community.
And we're going to need it too.
Well, look, again, but look, again, South Carolina got Joe Biden a second life. Okay.
Yes.
If he doesn't win South Carolina, he's dead in the race.
And we may not have won. I know some people on our, audience list would say that Bernie would have won, but we don't know that for sure. We don't know that.
No. That's what I'm saying. Well, I don't play that what if game. I mean, I do, but that's a hypothetical for another time. I mean,
well, the bottom line is, we're going to stay in the now. He didn't, and that's it.
And that's fine. And Joe Biden did. Now, could Bernie? I don't know. Could Elizabeth Warren? Both of whom I like politically more than I like Joe Biden.
We brought this up last week, but somebody questioned would the anti-Trump vote be enough? And we're saying we don't know that because there were enough people in the line, especially when it comes down to Georgia. You don't know. Yeah,
but anyway, it is. So we don't, I mean, we can look at Biden now and begin saying, okay, I don't like what he did here. I don't like, but he won. All right. And say he does keep that popularity.
And he has moved to the left. I mean, really, he's a lot more to the left than people thought. I mean, he's pushing with climate change, which is, it's the best we can do.
I read an interesting article that I hadn't really thought about, that actually, as the right goes further right, and it does, that the centrist becomes a liberal by default, right?
Right.
You know what I mean?
They'll paint that picture, yes.
And they'll paint the picture, and then people begin. But yes, I wish I had the numbers, Brian. I should have taken it down. If somebody out there did, or they can access it quickly, please do. Rutgers, I don't know, Harvard, one of the universities did a study of young people, and they support Biden in numbers that exceed anything in the modern age. So, that's kind of encouraging, right? At this point. So all back to this election. So there's nothing to say. Yes, all the odds and the anti-vote stuff, if we don't change that, are against us. But, there's no guarantee that this election will be like others and the Democrats will lose their places. Now, I really, and maybe again, there's somebody more politically astute than I am. Well, there's not, maybe there's a lot. I don't understand why the media, and I'm starting to get really kind of critical of my friends there, why they made such a big deal about the drop in the House, right? All you need is one vote if everybody sticks together, right? Yes, there were seats lost, but the Republicans didn't gain control.
Right. Bottom line is
Now
they don't have control.
And that's it. And the Senate, nobody really has control because it's so close. So,
Well, if Manchin
you know,
hadn't been such an asshole, and
well,
Cinema just a
I don't. Again, I'm certainly not in agreement with.
I don't like using
I'm,
the expression. Let's just say a political prostitute, which she is.
well, I'm not defending him. Don't get me wrong. I wish he were different, but I don't know enough to know why he's doing what he does. But I will say this: what he's doing is a disservice to the American people, right? But I don't know why he's doing it. Um, so, it's a new ball game now. If, on the other hand, the Republicans gain control of the Senate, yeah, then we've got a whole different ball game. But right now, remember what you get the
Well, you have
two
to do everything in 2. You have to do
what-
everything in
what-
2 years.
in 2 years that you can. But some of the most important things, such as the John Lewis Voting Act, you can't do because you've got the filibuster and the majority, and you can't change that because you don't have the majority because Manchin and Sinema won't go
Right.
along. And I'm sure that Joe Biden is trying to twist their arms. But
And so are the Republicans. That's the problem. They're the ones. And by the way, Dave, on Fox, both Cinema and Manchin have received a lot of positive feedback.
Of
They're
course
trying
they have.
to
Of
massage
course.
their egos.
Well, look, it's like somebody going out tonight in any bar in America and saying, we should have unity in this country. That's like saying you should love your mother if she doesn't beat you. I mean, of course,
Right.
but we don't have it.
You don't have
And so, of course, the Republicans, what Manchin and Sinema right now are doing, I believe two things. They are supporting the Republicans, whether they mean to or not. And by supporting the Republicans, they are not working for the majority of the American people. And of course, then there's the age-old argument. Is a senator more responsible for the United States, or is he or she more responsible for the state in which they represent?
Right.
And if this, basically, I think the original political thought, and it's kind of still followed through, is House representatives are kind of allowed to represent their small district, and whatever. But senators, at least by the idea of the founders, were to be above the fray, if you will. Now, people who say there's no change, go back and look at the damn changes. There's been changes all over the place. Everything has changed. But, we look at this, my favorite is when somebody argues that, the founders put in God we trust on the money and one nation under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. Both are full bullshit.
Right.
Okay. They came in during the time of communism, during the Red Scare. The idea, and that was a different world. Anybody who didn't live there doesn't understand, what they're talking about if they try to talk about it, because you had to live it. It's just like I can't.
And it was very threatening because you're taking an oath, and then they're putting God in it because if you have the slightest inclination of being sympathetic to the Soviet Union, that oath was there.
And of course, what was, because they were the godless people.
Teachers had to take oaths in the 1950s.
Correct. So the idea of people saying two things are wrong. It hasn't been changed and it can't be changed. So the idea of it is looking for change that makes America better. Because I will tell you this, if you don't do that, America's got too many problems if today is the way we're still doing things in 10 years.
And by the way, Manchin's already said that he's not going to go for the infrastructure bill as it is from the Democrats because it has money for schools as if schools aren't infrastructure. It just this is the asshole that he is, Dave.
I'm going to let you. I'm not going to debate that. I'm just saying, I'll call Donald Trump an asshole.
The pressure's got to come from the people there in West Virginia. All these people.
Well, they're not going to.
Shit. Well, there are some people there. They talk shit all the time.
Not enough.
Put your ass out and do it.
Not enough to do it.
Dave,
they are a red state. Okay, and Manchin knows that. The irony if you want, is they were once a very strong Democratic state when labor unions were in. And
Well,
that's
maybe
another thing.
the,
That's
maybe
another
the,
thing that has changed. I mean, the balance of power has shifted. Uh, Unions devastate. And again, I've got to find some people. I've been reading a little bit about it. I still can't wrap my head around why. Well, why the workers in Amazon would not want to be unionized. To me, a union is, especially in the modern age, just as it was in the age of the robber barons,
there was
is your
something
best
going on there. It had to be
is your
something.
well, and granted, I think I'm pretty sure I read this. They're already making $15 an hour. Well, shit, that's still not enough, right? And the working conditions and COVID ran rampant in those warehouses. And if nothing else, I would be angry that I'm making $15 an hour packing stuff that's leaving 15 billion for my boss.
Right.
I mean, to me that, but whatever reason, and again, look, it's very easy. I'm retired. So there are people who are just grateful to have a job, and certainly having a job is better than not having a job. But maybe I'm naive, but I think that there's a better chance of you keeping your job if you have a union than there is, in not having one. And the unions aren't angelic either. Okay. But what they are is what would you say? It's like the seesaw. They're on the other side, so there can be a little bit of balance between,
Right.
the modern robber barons.
Dave, I wanted to shift gears here, if you don't
Okay.
mind, because I know you
Sure.
kind of know about this topic. But I'm going to just throw something on the screen.
Okay,
here.
I'll just. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I already knew what it was.
No, this is
Oh no, it might be. Look,
somebody you have such a great
Oh my
attraction.
God, yes. Well, I do.
to.
I
I
think
mean,
that
let
yeah,
me get
no,
my, I mean,
not the
just-
same not the same attraction I have.
not for
Yeah.
Stormy, but she looks like 1/20th of Stormy Daniels, and the rest she kind of looks like I don't know, Morley Safer. I mean,
I don't know.
anyway,
Right. Okay.
I
So,
shouldn't be talking that way. I'm not usually into. I don't like doing the thing about looks. I don't do that. And I
well,
just do
look.
it.
I mean, I don't think she's an ugly person. I don't think she's unattractive.
No, it's
in
not
terms
that. It's just the way she
of
handles
looking.
herself. I find.
Well, I agree.
repulsive.
So she is repulsive.
But
Now,
what is this deal with the America?
America
She's
First.
trying to distance herself. But you tell us, tell the viewers what you see in this. I mean, I remember America First back in the late 1930s and all that kind of thing. But is it much different than Charles
Well,
Lindbergh and all that?
I just have something here. I've been looking at that a little bit. So what I have is actually the document that Ms. Green and some of her fellow Congress Republicans were going to put together. I just want to read a couple paragraphs of this in the beginning, and then I want to go through some of the provisions, and you can see how dangerous this document is. Okay. America First Caucus Policy Platform. The America First Caucus exists to promote congressional policies that are to the long-term benefit of the American nation. Great wording, right?
Nation.
But we want it to be the benefit of the American nation. The North Star, the North Star of any policy proposal will be that which serves the American people, and any consequential analysis of policy platforms must be based on this first principle. All of that is absolutely true, right? Hard to argue with that. Can you find any argument with it, Brian?
Not yet. Okay.
Not
Although
yet.
I don't like their language, but that's
What do you mean you don't like your language? Are you against? Let me ask you what you're against. Are you against benefiting the American nation? Are you?
well, I don't even like the expression "the American nation." It has this idea we all think.
Oh
the same.
no, you're putting your take your
Certainly
connotation,
am. Certainly
your
am.
thought of the words out, and the words themselves sound really nice. Now, obviously, what you're saying is no words stand alone. There's context, connotation, denotation, history, etc. So we get to the second paragraph. As this implies a degree of ideological flexibility. Stop for a moment. Ideological flexibility and the GOP? Really? Okay. A certain intellectual boldness is needed. Now, Brian, let me ask you, and you're being every man tonight, wouldn't you like to be called intellectually bold? Isn't that nice?
Scares me.
Why would it scare you?
I don't
You don't
like
want to.
anything that hints of trying to inflate somebody's ego. I don't even my own. I just don't like that.
Well, you're weird because I think
I just
most
don't,
people.
I
All right,
actually
let
would
me let
blush
me
if
try.
somebody said that to me.
Let me
I
try.
don't.
Let me try the other way. You're a dumb, stupid motherfucker. Do you like that?
It has
Do you like that?
it has an invidious sound to it. It's just
Do you like that?
I
Evade the
don't.
question.
No, I don't
Yes
like.
or
I
no?
don't like. I don't like it. I don't
All
like
right,
it. There you
stop.
go.
So you have two things you don't like. Okay, which one would you rather be accused, in your words, of having? Being an idiotic retard or having intellectual boldness?
I would certainly rather have the more positive.
And
Description.
very few people, Brian, would have your humbleness and reserve to say, that. But basically, so what they're doing is, again, as as communicators do, they're playing on words and what they want you to think. Now, here's where it goes off the rails. Um, let's see. A certain intellectual boldness is needed amongst members of the AFC to follow in President Trump's footsteps. Okay. So now we know where they're going. So now they've drawn up, if you like Trump, you're with us. If you don't like Trump, you're against us. And potentially step on some toes and sacrifice sacred cows for the good of the American nation. What sacred cows are they going to sacrifice? Policy areas as far ranging as foreign intervention, economic development, immigration, trade, tech regulations, and social policy need to be re-examined from the ground up to ensure
Yeah,
that
new
what remains
contract with America. It's just rebundled. And by the way, Dave,
that
don't you find it? If somebody had said the motherland or the fatherland, I mean, there's something. I mean, I know about the word nation, but it reminds me of
of
something out
course.
of World War One. The American nation was
Well,
going to
the
go fight
problem is,
the
Brian, and
Huns.
obviously I was picking on you there, but I would say this: uh, the American nation, actually, if you look at the American nation from its inception today, is a white nation. It's a white male nation, right? So yeah, American nation has not it has a historical
It's a
context of say,
connotation to it.
well, it's beyond. I mean, it just has an example. I mean, okay, let's look at how many women were part of the founding fathers.
Ben Franklin had long hair.
Can't get any there, buddy. They would have had him. He would have been transsexual, no transgender. How many African Americans were on the founding fathers?
I don't think we had any.
How many people in the founding fathers spoke Spanish?
Maybe Ben
No,
Franklin. I don't
no,
know.
he spoke French,
French.
and the only phrase he really used in French was "voulez-vous coucher avec moi," because he
Right,
tried
but
to
I'll
bet.
bet you he had entertained with somebody who spoke Spanish.
Absolutely, but nobody was fluent. Yeah, I mean nobody. I
I
mean,
don't
even
think
if they
that
were.
worried him too much.
Yeah. Um, how many? Now, here's an interesting one. How many gay people were in the founding fathers?
We'll never know. You have to
Yeah, we
assume
don't.
10%.
And you know why? Because you really would keep it under wraps.
It'd be easy
Pretty
too
much.
because you're not in the press.
But here's an interesting thing, though. If you go back and you study the history, the founding fathers were much more tolerant of gays than we were up until 20,
Well, they didn't.
25
It
years
was
ago.
never. It never really came out as a problem.
Yeah,
Then
no,
either.
exactly. There you are. Once they became, a voting kind of block, and that was it. So, yeah, when you talk about nation, you're talking about, this white nation. Now, some of the things, what worries me about this is three things. What first of all, that you would choose this wording there is no other reason than you want your version of American fascism and Nazism. Okay?
Mm-hmm. By the way, Dave, I'm just going to interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah.
I know I'm really behind on the pose, but I will. Dave and I will address your post
Yeah,
a little later.
Yeah.
I don't want to go out of context because Dave's going to start reading it, and I'm going to start reading it and realize,
yeah,
shit.
no, I agree.
I dropped the ball on that, but I'll get back to that.
That's okay. We'll get there. We'll stay on the air till we address every post. We'll always do that. Every post that needs addressing. So you've got, first of all, that, as you pointed out, when I was playing with you there, verbally, jousting with you verbally, the very wording of that smacks of certainly Nazism, neo-fascism, Ku Klux Klan, all the things that come with a white Aryan nation.
And obedience. There's a certain air of obedience when you say nation.
Always. Well, yeah, which is hard to get over. Now, I read an interesting article. I'm not going to go in depth with it. So I just want to highlight irony and stupidity often run hand in hand. So the words were, let me get this right, common respect for uniquely Anglo-Saxon political traditions.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's what it's talking. Well, here's the thing. Every Anglo and every Saxon who ever set foot in England and stayed there, do you know they were immigrants? The original people
from Germany, right? I mean,
the original people were the Celts, or if you're from Boston, the Celts, the Boston Celtics. The Celts were the original settlers there. Braveheart, if you remember the movie. I mean, and the Angles and the Saxons, and then the forgotten people, the Jutes. 3 Germanic tribes came over there and kind of took over and moved up, and that's why today the Celtic traditions are further north. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's sort of like the way here. Everybody but a Native American comes from an immigrant. There were no people here except Native Americans. So even the idea, again, irony, but this idea of reinforcing this whiteness, that's number one, a concern. Number two is the fact that they proposed it, Brian. They proposed it. And what did they do? Did they stand by what they proposed? What happened? They pulled it back. And we all, oh, that's good. No, it's not. The mere fact that they proposed it means they want it and they're going to continue to work against it. They didn't have a come to Jesus moment and say what we're doing is wrong. They just realized right now is not the time.
Time to do it. Well,
trust me.
Matt Gaetz certainly wants this to be deflect some of the attention off of him.
Right. Now, but the most troubling thing to me is if you talk about a nation in the first quarter, they've just done the what politicians raised in the first quarter, January, February, March. Miss Green, small contributors for the most part, not large, filled her coffers to the tune of $3.2 million.
Nice.
Okay. So what does that tell me? There's a hell of a lot of people out there. We always say, put your money where your mouth is. Well, they're putting their money on Aryan nationalism.
Right.
So again, should we say, geez, we beat that back? Yeah, but you can't rest. You can't rest. Because trust me, tonight somewhere, if Matt Gaetz isn't with a 17-year-old, and
he reminds me of these teachers that out of nowhere, they're having an affair with a 14-year-old, and then finds out they've been doing it for 5 years, so that goes back to elementary. It's just he just seems like that type, except he's a politician.
Well, and again, I'm going to be a stereotypical, something I say you shouldn't be. My first inclination when I saw Gaetz before I did it, not these bad, I just said, he just reminds me of a Southern evangelical sleazy preacher.
He's a creeper. He's a real creeper.
And we find out that indeed, I think we're going to find, it'll be interesting. What we will find out, certainly, his supposed friend down there who's turned kind of state's evidence so he doesn't have to spend the rest of his life in prison. apparently is singing, but we don't know. I mean, again, we don't know. A person, whether it's Matt Gaetz or whomever, when they're accused, they are not.
I mean,
They are not guilty until they're found guilty. But certainly, sometimes you can say if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck. I would guess and say, given the fact that it's been verified that indeed he did show pictures of naked women to fellow congressmen on the floor of Congress, and I'm pretty sure that not all those women realized that their pictures would be, shown.
Don't you think, Dave, that he and others like him, whether those who are going to get nabbed for the January 6th thing,
Right?
Don't you think that they're just like hoping or banking on the fact that Trump or somebody like Trump will be president in 4 years and they'll get a pardon?
Well, see,
because that's a possibility. If you're going to pardon Roger Stone,
Brian,
you're certainly going to pardon.
absolutely. But I don't think now this is kind of the way I look at it. Again, I don't think Matt Gaetz was born, fell out of his mother's womb being a sleazebag. But I think probably by the time he was a teenager, it was pretty fairly well established, right? So, I mean, what you say is true, but I don't know that he picked up. I don't know if he picked up his activities or any of them really picked up their activities expecting Trump to pardon them. I think they were well established.
Didn't he say that he wanted a blanket pardon? I believe when all this.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm not saying he didn't want the, but that didn't make him do more. He was just a bad dude who now saw an out if Trump would pardon him.
Yeah.
Now it's interesting. Why did Trump choose not to give him a blanket pardon?
Yeah, that's right.
You want to know why? Because I don't know, but I would say that. Okay, we all know that Trump has no loyalty. We know that.
Although he may have given a silent pardon, we don't know if there's.
So far we haven't seen this.
Lawrence
and there's
O'Donnell brought that up.
That's true, but there's some question on whether that's legal or not. That still has to be tested in the courts of law.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly it is something that can be done, which I think we've got to change that. But that's right now, yes. You can give a blanket silent pardon that only comes into play if the pardon is needed, which to me is just absolutely ludicrous. But having said that, I think Trump does value one thing maybe more than the other, which is length of service. That's why Roger Stone or Paul Manafort got the pardons. Certainly Michael Cohen didn't because he turned traitor in Trump's world. And I don't think
say that Michael Cohen is better than Roger Stone. We know that.
I don't argue, at least today. I don't know if they were today, going in. Yeah. But again, so Matt Gaetz, but we don't know when we talk about this, like tonight somewhere. Okay. Well, certainly Mitch McConnell isn't breaking bread with Ted Cruz. Who might he be breaking? But say 3 or 4 of the more ranking senators. They're sitting there. We don't know what they're saying about Ted Cruz or the others. But we do know that when it comes time, they pretty much present a unified front in terms of voting. Now, this is something that obviously some people, maybe McConnell, some others, said, whoa. See, McConnell's old school. He likes dog whistles. And of course, that phrase means hints and clues without being direct. Trump was much more direct. How much more direct can you be than calling Mexicans rapists? It's wrong. It's insidious, but and people kind of like that. They like that directness. Well, I'm sorry if you like that directness, then you're not a good person either. You can't have the directness. Or I love the people. Well, he says some things I don't agree with, but well, if you agree with anything Trump did, I'm sorry, you can't be a good person. I'd love to tell you differently, but you can't. So what we have is, again, I'm glad you brought that up about this caucus. Look, every time, Brian, it's just kind of funny. If you look at the show, a theme comes up, even though we don't intend one. And what I'm hearing tonight from you and I, and we'll see what the comments, because we'll pick up those in just a minute. But this idea of, what I'm trying to verbalize it as well as I can. Okay, is we've gotten some victories, okay, recently. But as cliched as it is, the war goes on, the battle goes on. They're temporary. Um, they're going to continue until such time. They're going to continue until such time as the Republicans cannot have a majority anywhere in government.
Right. It's
just the way it is.
What it is.
And that's not partisan politics. That's just simply, if you can convince me, not you, but if any person can convince me that what the Republican Party is doing is for the benefit of the words that they put in there, the good of the American nation, I'm willing to reconsider. But until that time, I'm not. So let's get some comments up.
Yeah,
there,
let's throw these.
Let's see what people are saying.
We're gonna go back in time a little bit, but we're gonna get there. So we'll deal with these as they come up. So Trev, this goes back to our commentary about Bernie. He said, and this is, obviously our audience tends to be a little bit more.
And I have no problem with that. I'm just saying that, Trev, you're absolutely entitled to your opinion, just as I'm entitled to my opinion that I'm not sure that what you say would happen or wouldn't happen. The only fact we know is Donald Trump was defeated by Joe Biden. Does that make Joe Biden the best of the Democratic candidates? Not necessarily, but he was good enough to beat Donald Trump.
Right. Veg has said here, I just read that Biden is doubling capital gains tax on they need to be doubly taxed on capital gains.
We were talking about changes and what doesn't change. It's meme-ish. You'll see it. Most all of us have seen it. The Republican platform under Eisenhower. I mean, look at the tax structure that Eisenhower had. And he was a Republican. Well, different time, different things, but basically, then look at what's happened since 1980. We give a name to it. It's Reaganomics. That's really when this kicked in, and some things we couldn't foresee. The pandemic. You and I talked a little bit about that this week. Mm-hmm. I've talked to other people about it. What the pandemic has done is very similar to what Trump has done. We were headed in that direction anyway, but it speeded up the change. So what do I mean by that? I think the Republican Party was headed down the road there, but Trump as catalyst, stirring it, moving it faster, really giving it sanctions, give it its sanctions, did faster than they would have.
So this I do like this though. I mean, this is part of the.
Absolutely. No, there's certainly look.
The conservatives. This is where they get off, because if the income tax goes up, they're just going to get their money back through reduced capital gains. Because they'll just invest and they'll get paid in stock options and things like that.
Well, I mean, look, that's. I mean, okay, yes, Amazon created more jobs than anyone else during the pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. I mean, that's a good thing, right? But when you look at what did they contribute to society versus what was taken out of the people whose jobs they gave taxes, who contributed more? Okay, I heard Putin today talk about why he believes in God.
Brian, he's made these connections.
I'm going to leave that to you.
Okay, here's what it is. I mean, I discussed this last week with a friend of mine. She lives in Arkhangelsk. She said that, basically, the Russian Orthodox Church is doing the same thing they did during the Soviet era. They're basically getting support from Putin's, and so they give it right back. The church is weak there, but it kind of looks good. Now he may believe God. I don't know, because his favorite wrestler is that Emelianenko guy, who was this MMA guy who was a great success. Who's very, very religious. So I think he plays politics with that. He's probably the same type of guy Trump is in terms of.
Well, see, what I was wondering about that, and again, I'm not real impressed if somebody says to me, I believe in God, just the same as I'm not real impressed if they say to me, I don't believe in God. What I want to look at is how they act. So if Putin does believe in God, I think he's either believing in the wrong God or has a mistaken idea of how God, as any person should conceive of him, her, or it, or as a force, would want people to react.
Okay.
Thanks, Doc. That's I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we're talking about Doctor Spock or I don't know,
Yeah, well, no, there's some
Doctor
other stuff. I
J.
mean, there are a lot of comments, but I
Well,
don't
just
think it's
get
really
no,
apropos.
you don't. No, find the ones that actually lead. Not that
Okay.
they're not apropos. We love, ladies and gentlemen, we love the fact that you converse with yourselves while you're out there because this is like kind of a community meeting. We're not that stuck on our words.
Jeff's talking about the death
Yes.
rate in Canada. It's bad up
Mhm.
there, but it's still a third of what we have here.
Again, we'll sound that theme. If I were to say to you, Brian, and again, you're speaking for every person, Brian, guess what? Billy doesn't want to get vaccinated. If Billy has a political party, what party would you assume he'd be part of?
Billy?
Yeah, Billy, Joey, Tommy, anybody. If I just told you somebody didn't want to get a vaccination,
Oh, that'd be
what
the Republican Party for sure. Yeah.
exactly? So once again, threatening. Now, does that mean no? A lot of Republicans are, but you have groups that are all, I think, a challenge. The anti-vaxxers are a challenge, and then you say, "Well, Dave, you're going to give a pass to somebody." Well, yeah, I am right now. To African Americans who have been subject to a lot of things. And I think we need to convince them. I mean, we can try to convince everyone, but I understand the hesitancy on the part. And I think it will take, we have a couple like Jimmy Moss who went to Bridgeton. Maybe they'll look at Jimmy, who's black and is now, really a very high ranking and very well respected physician in America. People like that get in there and start doing that. Or again, we talk about the cult of personality is not always bad, right? It can be very good. If LeBron and Mr. Barkley, whose pictures we saw tonight, or anyone, or entertainers, or Denzel, or even more importantly, Young, because that seems to be another group, Brian, that doesn't surprise me that are hesitant. And you have to remember, for this whole pandemic up until this last wave, it's basically been the old, right? I mean, it was not now.
Now it's not that case.
Now it's because it's hitting more. It's not changed. It's just it's hitting who it can hit,
Right.
and that kind of thing.
Right.
So home is
Okay.
good. Home is always good if home is good if good resides in your home. Bill, I guess we're talking about one of the slobs that would be trying to break the rules in the strip joint I bartended at. Sandy, we'll need to talk about that. Not about breaking the rules, but you can tell me about the girls who were there. I know you. I think that I think they're some of the least respected women in America who should be more respected. That's just my take.
Especially the one you like.
There's not just you want to talk about sadness. You do know who died this week, right? Tempest Storm died this week.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Oh, see, you do know old fashioned. Actually, she was in a class by herself. I did. I mean, I remember she used to come to the Trocadero all the time in Philadelphia. As a young.
That's fine. I got one truck story. I was at the truck when I saw the Dixie Dregs, but long before that, there was a teacher in Cherry Hill I was talking to, and he was an old timer, and he used to go to the truck when he was a teenager. He would get sneak in there. And he says it was the kind of place where you'd see like this jazz drummer, and then there'd be some saxophone player, and there's some stripper out there, and then there'd be this drummer just drumming really slowly, and there'd be smoke rings coming through the stage there, and he's like this with his head back, and this whole thing about the truck. I never forgot when I did see the Dixie Dregs. I've seen them a couple times at the truck, but my friends said to me, "You're not gonna believe, did you see the rat that just went along the wall there?" I said, "No."
Oh, well, yeah. Well, the truck, I mean, for those who don't know what we're talking about, because we're using in Philly lingo, the Trocadero was the premier strip burlesque palace, and it was not a palace ever.
There was a guy there that would always scream, like he'd start off, say, "Cheese and crackers." But I was never there when it was a strip club. I was too young.
I was, but
yeah.
No, I wasn't. No, I did see my first burlesque show at 16, but it was not at this truck. The idea was, which was funny, that also speaks to change, Brian. There's another theme tonight. once upon a time, before the complete availability of pornography, before Playboy magazine, before now, I often wonder, I laugh sometimes, if somebody in 19 who left the planet about 1951 were to come back and be able to see what's on television. I mean, it's kind of, we still think of it as relatively mild, but can you imagine, what they've seen? But that industry died. The burlesque industry actually died. And you
Like
mentioned the
vaudeville.
musicians. You mentioned the musicians, and since it's always nice to have people relate to your life. As I think everybody listens to the show know, Brian lives in the city where I grew up and spent 59 years. And they used to have the county fair there. It is the county seat of Cumberland County. And of course, the county fair, back then, before there was Disneyland, and it was a big deal to go to the county fair. And there were two things that fascinated me there. One was the Battle of the Bands, because I was just starting to get into the idea of music in the '60s and play it. But the other was the Coppertone Review, and that was a traveling burlesque show that came every year. And there were two things that fascinated me. First were the girls. I was 13, 14, 15. By 16, I was able to get in. Got an 18-year-old. What was going on there? And there's always that allure. But the other side of it was they had crackerjack bands, all black, that were just as good as James Brown and the Fabulous. And it was the same. I mean, music was always associated with that because musicians were low lives, and they could do that. And I just remember the Coppertone. Then what they would do, Bri, is they would come out. The show lasted, let me try to remember. I think the show lasted 30 minutes, right? So every 30 minutes on the hour. They got a 10-minute break. And then one or two of the girls and members of the band would come out and just entice the audience in, right? And it was eye-opening the first time I ever got in. The mayor of Bridgeton was in there, and a couple ministers, people I mean, just ordinary guys going in.
We have a question.
Do you think,
here.
Milan?
She wants this answered.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
The rumor is she has a boyfriend.
Well, that's not. But what it is, I just finished, and again, I always hesitate, saying, "Oh, read this book," or listen to this music. But from time to time, I break it. It was a fascinating book. I knew probably 80% of what was in there, but the 20% I didn't know was, and the 80% was jives with what I know. It's called Sex with Presidents. And it started with Alexander Hamilton and, of course, ended with Donald Trump. And my wife read it, too. And she said, "Oh, my God." There's some characters that have been presidents. But one of the things that's very normal, presidents really don't sleep with their wives. Jimmy Carter was an exception. Barack. I mean, not sexually.
And Nixon,
they have separate bedrooms.
Was
separate. Well, yeah, but they have separate bedrooms. And they've said that the Trumps have had separate bedrooms for years. So, I mean, I don't know how accepting she was, because if you remember, she delayed coming to Washington after the story of the Playboy model and Stormy broke. So I'm sure she negotiated a few things with her husband. What they do say, though, and again, I'm only saying what people here say, they say she really tries to be as good a mother as an international model can be to her son, to Barron.
So Trev wants to get back on this topic here. He says, "Not an opinion, Dave. Many outsider votes that went to Trump would have gone to Bernie, guaranteed."
Trev, sorry, I am going to argue with you on that. Any time that you contend something would have happened that didn't happen, it's an opinion, because we can only tell the facts. So you might be right, you might be wrong. But anything that you say it would have, you can't say that, because I think you're right. I mean, I don't know how many, but like I said, but I do know this: Joe Biden got more votes than Donald Trump and became president. Would Bernie might have done better than Joe? He might have. I mean, I don't know, but I will say this: my concern is about Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. The Republicans are brilliant at labeling people, and Trump was one of the best ever. Think of all the names we remember from him, Bri. Little Marco, and Lion Ted, and And oh, he would have had a field day with socialism. Now, I have no problem with socialism, especially the type that Bernie practices, which is democratic socialism. But that would be a concern. So, not it's not worth arguing over,
Right.
Trev. I respect your opinion. I can't disprove it, nor do I want to. I hope that you are right. I hope that the Democrats had 5 or 7 or 12 people that could have beaten
I want to
Trump.
address this one here, Dave.
Go ahead.
Rob, and
Yeah, I'm going to
Putin
leave that.
explain why he believed in God was very interesting, and I'm sure he did. But as one of my friends, actually, 2 of my friends have said, but one used foul language in Russian, but he said essentially he said that everything that comes out of that motherfucker's mouth is a lie. Literally, he said it. And
Well-
that you cannot trust Putin because he really does lie a lot.
Well, here's the thing, Brian. You could make an argument that I'm sure some of our viewers would make, and it would be legitimate. The idea of truth in politics is somewhat nebulous, right? Spin has always been there. Reasons, why. And a point to this is, I mean, certainly the end result was great. Lincoln did free the slaves. Okay, he did.
Bottom line.
But the main reason he did it was to create a second front in the South, and also the abolitionists were ready to ditch him, very much like today. They didn't like McClellan because McClellan was playing to Southern sympathies. But what he wanted to do, McClellan, the general that famously didn't do anything and Lincoln removed, he had a personal vendetta against Lincoln for removing him. But he also realized that the people were tired
he
of war.
sucked. McClellan sucked.
Well, but he didn't think he did.
No, he didn't, but he did suck.
Yeah. Well, I know that isn't weird. And Lincoln, you can read his own. He felt, and it's in his own words, so I'm not making this up. He felt that the two races could never really coexist. So he was in favor of emancipation and return to Africa. So, did he do a good thing? Yes. Right.
Ronnie put those up. I didn't,
Yeah. Well,
probably going to get new ones eventually. We did that just to be able to knock out some of the, any type of air escape or anything like that.
So glad you have so many years in, Dave. Me too. I guess that means in life. You know what? It's funny. Obviously the show or anything isn't about me or you, Brian, or any of us. But I do find some interest in this. It just worked out this way for me, not for anyone else. When I was coming into what I call of age, which would have been 1969, I graduated high school and moved to college. And my next 4 years were spent basically as a radical, in the streets of DC and, as much as I could, and getting down here and, taking stands and on college takeovers and, whatever. And then, I put it aside because you do other things. But I felt that I was doing, still being somewhat the, the activist by taking on 2 careers. One was a journalist at a time when journalists were very much active. I think I mentioned what a great time to start. I started on the week that Nixon resigned. You talk about a great week to start, right? Right there, and then teaching, I think, and again, I'm not going to argue with anyone. I think teaching is a job where you certainly touch the future every day. But you also have to be careful because you can also do bad things to the future. And now here I am, 69 years old, living in Washington, D.C., haven't gotten maced recently, but back in protesting. But the only thing that I find interesting.
Gary's comment again here too.
He's close. He's close. It is reported that he did. Again, I'm going to do the same thing I did with Trev, Gary. I can't disprove it. It certainly appears that way. It was downplayed at the time because they said men often slept together because Lincoln also slept with men earlier. But like if you had a rooming house, you would do that. But certainly there's, certainly that allegation is out there. But I said, coming back here to Washington, just ending the career, the one thing that makes it really odd, I've never protested in defense of a government, which I'm kind of doing now, right? I mean, I'm not against, I'm speaking for being a Biden supporter. Also, the other day, I shot a picture downtown of me pointing to J. Edgar Hoover's empty FBI building. And I'm thinking, man, if the FBI does its job, I'm going to support them. What the hell happened? But again, this one of these other what would I say thematics or motifs of this show is change. So you have to be expected that. So yeah, if that's what you meant, I'm really glad. I'd like to live another 69 years, but I won't. So, but I'd like to live long enough to continue seeing as much as I can before I won't see anything anymore. Anything else, Bri, for us?
One more here. Jimmy Carter is
Oh,
a Canadian
God.
hero building homes.
Oh, Trev, there's no question. No question. He is the greatest American ex-president ever. What I find interesting is, he only had one term. He also came as an outsider, Brian. He was, while he certainly was in no way like Trump, he was really looked at. Remember who he succeeded, right? Gerald Ford, who had been appointed as vice president when Spiro Agnew was found corrupt. And, there wasn't a person in the Nixon organization. I think 81 eventually Nixon's people went to some kind of jail time for crimes committed, political crimes. But Carter, again, maybe a victim of timing a little bit, got blamed for gas prices, came out, he was austere. He came out and told the Americans what they should hear. We need to cut back. I don't know if you remember, Brian, he did it, wearing a sweater. He turned the heat back on the White House, trying to do that. And then, of course, his complete downfall, some economic, was America felt helpless because of the Iranian crisis. Now, we know today, it's been established that Ronald, not necessarily Mr. Reagan directly, but before he was president, that people on behalf of Mr. Reagan did negotiations with the Iranians and the Taliban to hold off on that, to make Carter look bad. And certainly the timing kind of proves that there's some truth to that. You do know that, they returned the day of Reagan's inauguration. So certainly, again, but, so we can debate, was Carter a good president or not?
Well, we know that Reagan was overrated. The only thing is he just had his personality was such that.
Oh, well, even I give him that. I mean,
he had a nice way about himself. He wasn't rude or anything like that.
No.
He could get upset though sometimes with reporters.
No, well, yeah, anyway, but no, I think a remark that always, I don't mean this makes him he was a terrible president, but the idea when he was shot, it's been verified. He looked up the surgeon and said, "Please tell me that you vote Republican." When he's been shot, and the fact that he got in the car and this macho hero he built up. But certainly, I think what is interesting, Carter has proven to be a much stronger individual and a much better person than Reagan, who defeated him.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Dave, I think we've rounded out our comments for the evening, and we've put together a show actually.
Almost. We got a few minutes left. All right, Brian. Maybe let's start ending it this way. Maybe, and ladies and gentlemen, if you like this ending, say so. If you don't, not. And it's not original. I've seen this. A couple columnists they do it in interviews like this kinds of shows. I think it's great. Brian, tonight you're going to be going to bed, talking about America, not about your personal life, or anything. What is your biggest? And whenever I say biggest, you could have more than one, but not 1,000. What's your biggest fear for America right now? When you go to bed tonight and close your eyes, if you thought about it, you'd say, "Yeah, this is probably the one."
What's the biggest fear? Well, I have such a distaste for the Republican Party. I've had this for 30 or 40 years. I think my biggest fear is that the Republicans are going to actually win in this thing, and I'm going to have to live the rest of my life in frustration. Look, nobody likes living in frustration, but I had a lot of frustration for 4 years, and I think I don't look forward to that with them. They just create a lot of frustration. I'd rather them be frustrated with us than we frustrate with them, and that is it. I think whatever they do, it just bugs the hell out of me. And to see them win, that's my biggest fear, and And I think that's just an honest answer. I'm
Yeah.
afraid they're going to win.
Well, I'm going to tie in my two careers. It's kind of hard when you spend as much time as I did in journalism and education. So they're sort of related. I just worry about this idea of having at least two, maybe more, two separate and distinct realities. I don't see how we survive that. Now we can label them, as Republicans and Democrats, if you want, or liberals and conservatives. So, I mean, I just really don't understand. Now, I also don't say it's the worst thing. No, there's no guarantees. Now, I don't think I was talking to somebody the other day. I don't see civil war coming to America, but I don't see America as successful or as successful as we could be or should be. And I don't see success as being, economic growth or anything. I'm just talking about really saying we're the land of opportunity. I'm not naive. There'll always be differences, but I don't see how we're going to accomplish those things when you have, when you have just two different realities. And the list just goes on. Guns, no guns. There's a middle ground, right? Black lives matter. You say that to people, all lives matter. That's not the point. The point is that right now, you are a fool if you say Black lives matter as much as white lives matter. And it shouldn't be. It should be all lives matter, but we're not there yet. We have so much to do. And then along those same lines, it worries me on the other side. One of my absolute things has been free speech all my life. But I don't know how you have free speech when a side lies. That's always been there. But when half of America believes the lies. So I'm going to go, what worries me is the fact that I don't see why when this show is going to end. And I mean, semi-joke, I enjoy doing this, and it's something to do. And literally, I joke and say I don't have anything to do on Saturday night. DC's just starting to open up. I don't know if you saw today. The Smithsonian's, which are kind of the barometer of DC, they begin to stagger their openings again in May. They were open once during the pandemic and immediately closed. And they said this time we will not reopen if we don't think, we can stay open. Now, that doesn't mean, but they're looking at the numbers, and I think that's wise. But Brian, again, we just have down here, and I'm sure you see it in Bridgeton, and everybody in their communities sees it. We've been hurt by this pandemic. We've been hurt by 4 years of Trump here. Canada hasn't been hurt, but the pandemic certainly hurt them or our neighbors to the south, all over the world. I do want to kind of, maybe I mention this just because I think sometimes it's good to get a different perspective. As viewers know, my son and daughter-in-law and grandson and granddaughter are going on year 2 in Australia. I wish the bad things that happened to Keith hadn't happened because he was one of our regular Australian viewers, and he was telling me things, about Australia, which were pretty cool. But here's the thing, Brian. I was talking to Michael this week, and Australia is really pissed, right? And here's why they're pissed. They they've been doing the right thing. I mean, they've been able to they've got contact tracing down. They're back open. They have theaters, and they're doing fine. Once in a while it breaks out. And they say, okay, now it's time. We need to get back. We want to travel places, but, we want people in. It was their economy has been shattered because they rely so much on tourism. Well, guess what? They were promised a lot of vaccine that isn't arriving. Other countries are grabbing it, one of them being Italy, and saying, look, you don't need it. You're fine. We need it, right? And there's some validity to that. But now these people are saying, wait a minute, we did the right thing and now we're being punished. So I guess the message there is not about Australia. It's a message to us. Yeah, sometimes you do the right thing and you still get punished, but you still did the right thing. Right. Put the one comment up I saw, Trev. I think it was Trev said his biggest fear. Biden failing to step up the task at hand, defeating fascism, and it's the end.
That is the task at hand. He's
Oh,
right.
Trev,
He's absolutely right.
Trev is right. but again, I'm not supporting Biden. It's not Biden alone. And I think what we have in America, Trev, I think we have, and I can't speak to other countries because I've never lived in other countries. We have a very what should I say, unhealthy reliance on others to solve our problems. I mean, Biden is the most important person in the United States in terms of making change, right? But he's only one. We have to make it too. We can't just sit back. And so if you hate fascism, which I do, I have to do my part too, right? And, and that's, not that we're all in this together, kumbaya down the road, but everybody has to take a side. Brian, you said that all along. Ain't no more fence sitting.
And that's the one thing I can't stand, the fence sitters. And I've found this just, again, I don't want to go into this whole spiel about the previous channel, but it's just the idea that I found a lot of people just talk shit, and then they don't do it.
I mean, that's everywhere. Look, and Brian, I've told you.
I mean, everybody was. They tried to be. They tried to look good in front of everybody. So they're going to cut up Trumpers. They'll cut up the Biden. I mean, it's just
people are, first of all, people are entitled to their opinion. That will never change. Okay, and I believe that people are entitled to their vote. If you don't believe in that, then you really don't believe in America. Having said all that, I think that what I would say is you have to look at who the enemy is. To me, the enemy is not really the GOP or Donald Trump. It's the fascist anti-American ideology that they present. They are no better at this point than the Nazi Party, the National Socialist Party, who took over Germany was when they took it over. People say, well, we don't have concentration camps. Well, yeah, we don't. But neither did they when they took over, right?
Right. They wanted to have complete control, and then it spiraled out of control.
And
they're still human beings, and so the same thing could happen.
Yeah. And again, to get to your fence sitters, whether it's here or anywhere, it's usually the fence sitters that allow, sometimes the bad to happen because
they're the ones that
because they I'd rather prefer, and you've kind of indicated that too. I would much prefer that a person takes a stand, even if it's a stand that I don't believe in. Then, but again, having said that, I'm kind of not being wishy-washy here. But Brian, you have to remember too, a lot of people don't want to offend. A lot of people really, they've been Republicans all their lives. Maybe they just, they just want to. They don't see that the Republicans that they joined 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that their parents were in. I had that conversation. It was the last conversation I had with my cousin, or one of my cousins, who said to me, if your mother were alive, she'd be turning over in her grave. And I said, well, Harry, if my mother were alive, she wouldn't be in the grave. That's the first point. But the second point is no, she was a lifelong Republican, but she was a Republican who was a Republican during the Eisenhower years and the Rockefeller years, when Republicans were today, the Republicans of today would accuse the Republicans at that point of being socialists.
Right.
Again, let's see. Joey Fulcher's opinions are like assholes, and everyone's got one. Where'd that come from?
Uranus.
That's where you were born. Yeah. So, Brian, again, now, one of the things we're talking about, people, we're going to try it now, but I think I kind of the one who reevaluated. I like to, what should I say? I just like to start things. I don't like to start things in the middle of the month. I don't think it's superstitious. It's just not. So one of the things we're talking about, people will put out there is so that you have a little bit idea, how the show runs. But sometimes it might have an idea. I think Brian and I are talking about, I think we're going to lean with this, Brian. We're talking about it today, is having one topic that will kind of not promote, but let you know in the week. So if it's really something, you'll know at least one thing we're going to talk about. And part of the purpose is it's great. We don't need to grow the show, but it would be nice. So maybe, if it's something that 6 or 7 of your friends, would be interested in, you can let them know. So I'm just going to say thank you for everybody who viewed. tonight. As always, we're in a fight. I think we can still smile. I think we're on the side of the angels, if there were angels, which I don't believe in, but if there were, we'd be on their side. And again, there are no guarantees we'll win. But I think we have to continue. Brian, you said it so well. We live in the now, we act in the now, but I think we have to do it for those who came before us, even though they're no longer here. And then we have to do it for those who come after us. And that's just the way it works.
Right. So listen, Dave, and thanks, Veg, and thanks everybody. I mean, really,
Yeah.
really. And we're getting a lot of comments through the end, which tends to be a thing.
That's
these
okay. Well,
days.
we got a couple minutes.
Okay, progressive thinks hating on Biden will make him deliver more social spending that will never happen.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, again, my thing is, I will tell you this. I don't know whether at the end of the day or the end of his term, I will agree with how Biden has spent his money, but I do know I will agree with it a lot more than the way Trump would have spent America's money if Trump were in charge. And there is a problem, Brian, with spending money. Money's wonderful, but it has to be used wisely. One of the reasons I'm such a big fan of infrastructure, as long as it's tied in with some kind of a greening of America, if we're going to use oil and gas, no. But you can solve many things. The infrastructure in America is falling apart. Okay, that's true. You've got that Veg, that'll never.
Isn't that great?
that
Veg knows you well.
Veg. I think you were talking to my wife tonight. One of her favorite things. She said it to me today. She said it with all the love she could muster. And my wife only curses around one person, me. She does not curse around anyone else. And she looked at me with love in her eyes and said, "Would you shut the fuck up?"
Dave, this I'm going to share, and I think Dave kind of knows this one. Years and years ago, there was this, I guess it was near the summer or something, and I used to be a facilitator at the school for a year, and Dave was talking. It had to do with Dave's, some kind of program going on, and Dave would get the kids in the cafeteria and talk about this and that and what was going to happen. And I was responsible for putting out a survey. And so I asked the kids, did you have any problems with what we said? Did you like what we said? And so kid said, "Well, can you give me an example?" I said, "Well, you could say, Mr. Price talks too much, right?" So we get the surveys back. And there was 400 that said, "Mr. Price talks too much."
Well, see, the problem is,
You knew that, did you, Dave?
Oh yeah, I knew that. What I liked about that is, though, and this is going to show you how much humility I really do have. As I tell people, I think I'm really truly humble for as great as I am. But the idea is this: true genius is never understood in its own time. So, Brian, I understand. You do not understand me. As far as my wife is concerned, I pointed out to her that living with me must be like living on the sun without sunglasses. So I understand sometimes when she curses at me.
She's great because she calls you asshole. It's great. It's like the best.
Today it was yeah.
Can't you shut up?
Okay, last thing, I never can. So now you brought this up. I got to say this about appearances. You know how we were talking earlier, Brian, about how words, and remember Marcia Green using these good words and they're not. So today I was really being obnoxious to my wife because we were in one of those days, and so we were actually riding to Pentagon City, and we're gonna stop and do something anyway. So we get out of the car, and we hadn't been arguing, but I wanted lunch and she wasn't hungry, and lunch is the most important thing in my life, except for dinner and snacks. But anyway, I said, she said, "Would you just go come in about 5 hours? I've had it with you, right?" Mm-hmm. And so I get out of the car and I come up behind her and I kind of put my arms around her and I'm, "Oh, honey," I'm kissing her. And this could have been anybody, but a young black lady walks by and she's, "Oh my God, that's so endearing and romantic." And my wife stopped and explained the whole situation to her. So certainly, I guess the motto is that what we see, is not always true. And so I share with my Republican friends that what Donald Trump says is never true. And what you see about America is not the way it really is.
Well, Dave, thank you so much.
You don't have to thank me. I wish you'd pay me. I wish you'd pay me more, man.
It's just the way it is. And everybody, thank you. And I'm actually going to sign off with. I can't even find my video that I sign off with that nice blood red scene from the.
Is that the one you said you were tired of that everybody likes? Are you sure
Yeah,
you can't
yeah.
find it? Or are you just
No,
not playing it?
I
because
could
you're
find it
tired?
if I really tried, but I think today we'll just leave the show as like this, and just to throw something in it. And I'm going to have to sign off there. See, Judy's probably telling you to shut up.
No, wait a minute. She's coming in now. What, hon? No, it's not just 10 of.
Judy, tell
Did
him
you
to
hear
shut up.
No, I've got it through headphones. She just said that she pledges her undying love to me, and that when she just did this, which she just did to me when I said that, she said that was simply showing that I am number one in her life.
Okay.
And I believe that.
Yeah, well.
I think she's tired, Brian. She said, shut the goddamn show off.
Okay.
So I think that,
Yeah. Well, okay. Well,
good night, everybody.
Dave, and I won't be able to. I'll talk to you tomorrow, right, Dave?
Yeah, no, I'm done too.
All right. I'll see you. See everybody.
All right.